This is Defender Radio. I'm Michael Howie, and this is Defender Radio, the podcast for wildlife advocates and animal lovers, brought to you by the Fur Bearers. We're releasing this episode in time for International Rabbit Day, a celebration of our favorite floppy-eared lagomorphs. While rabbits do make wonderful companions, they are frequently released or dumped in the wild. And with an exceptionally quick gestation period, that can lead to a lot of domestic rabbits in the wild really fast. Fortunately, there are incredible people out there who are trying to prevent the need for dumping and finding homes for rabbits, like Amy McLaughin of Amy's Bunny Barn on Vancouver Island. A vet assistant, past SPCA worker, and passionate advocate for rabbits, Amy is providing essential education, foster care, and resources to help keep bunnies in homes with full, happy lives. To share more about what goes into caring for a pet rabbit, why dumping is such an issue, and the importance of meeting the many needs of bunnies in homes, Amy joins Defender Radio. I think to start, a great place is the beginning. So how did Amy's Bunny Barn sort of become what it is today?
Yeah, so it kind of organically just happened, really. I worked at the SPCA for 11 years, and I originally just started boarding bunnies for adopters, just for free, just so that I can stay connected with the bunnies that I had adopted out. I'm like, this is a great way to, be able to hang out with them and, see how they're doing after adoption and just have still that bond with them. Cause like every bunny that I care for, I love, and I'm responsible for them for their entire life. And then people just started asking me to rehome their pets. And it just Amy's Bunny Barn started being like boarding, and then it turned into a rescue. I started it in 2016. I always wanted a rescue when I was a little kid. I was like, one day I'm going to have a rescue. I remember seeing two SPCA cruelty officers who I ended up working with, which was so cool, on the TV one time. And they were rescuing some raccoons out of a dumpster. And I remember saying, like, that's going to be me one day. And well, it is me. So
That's awesome.
yeah. And then like when I worked at the SPCA, I was more into cats. Like I always wanted bunnies when I was a kid, but my parents didn't let me. And it's probably a good thing because I probably wouldn't have cared for them properly. So I'm glad that they said no. But yeah, I started off being more into cats, and I ended up taking over like the bunny area at the shelter, and I learned so much working there. And then I went got my vet assistant diploma, worked in vet clinics, and I wanted to learn more about rabbits. So I worked in a vet clinic that was more specific to rabbits. So that's where I got a lot of like my medical knowledge on how to take care of them.
And it's great, but I think something that we should address early is the need for rescue and rehoming for rabbits, because I think a lot of people are familiar with, dogs and cats. We see them a lot in media when we talk about rehoming or rescuing animals. We see them in our communities very clearly as roaming cats or dogs. But particularly in British Columbia, rabbits, there's a big issue with the population of domesticated rabbits or domestic species rabbits who have been released, and then just the sort of sprawl out from there.
Yeah, it is really bad. And there's hundreds of rescues for cats and dogs. And I saw that at the SPCA too, where while I was working there was so much support for cats and dogs, and people just see rabbits differently, and it's bad. It's really bad all over the island, like everywhere from one side to the other side. There's just colonies of domesticated bunnies that have been dumped. And it just starts off with a couple, and then it turns into a colony extremely fast. Bunnies
Bunnies are no one for that. Yep.
there's a reason why there's a term called breed like bunnies. So once they turn about 3 to 6 months, they can start having babies, and then they have a litter every 30 days.
Wow.
So that can show you how quickly two bunnies can turn into a bunch of bunnies. So a big issue that we do see is people purchasing rabbits online or from breeders or from, well, not pet stores necessarily, but like markets where farmers go. And then because they sell them at such a young age, they can't really confirm their genders properly. So people will think they have two girls or two boys when really they have a girl and a boy, and then they don't even know until they got babies. And then they don't realize that as soon as mom gives birth, mom can conceive again. So then before they even have time to separate them, she's already pregnant.
Wow.
So then someone who's just gotten two bunnies, they're like, now they've got a mom, a dad, and two litters.
Yeah. And that's a lot of rabbits in a very short period of time. And what's one meant to do when you suddenly have 20 rabbits in your little house that you were prepared to have two rabbits in?
Yeah, that's where people are, well, contacting us, but it's not simple for us to take on, up to 20 rabbits in one go. So, we try our best to do that, but that's a big responsibility. And then, we don't really have the space and the resources because we're a smaller rescue, and we generally already have like 50 to 70 bunnies in care at any given time. So then people are dumping them outside.
And I think that the ecological impact of that is very clear at this point. But I don't think people necessarily realize what it means for the welfare of the rabbits who are dumped outside, particularly if they're from a domestic species. Could you share more about that? What welfare concerns there are with rabbits being left outdoors?
Yeah, there's so many. So many. So people have a conception that, oh, it's a bunny, it's a farm animal, it's a wild animal. We could just dump it outside, it will live fine. No, like once we've domesticated an animal, they don't have the survival skills to find food, to hide properly. They're not able to like seek out food or water like say a cottontail would. Like a cottontail is not going to sit in the middle of a field and eat grass and be open to getting killed by birds or other predators. So that's a big thing with domesticated rabbits that are dumped, is they often die from starvation or just thirst. And they don't have the survival skills. So they're just sitting out in the open. So they're picked off by birds, birds of prey, dogs, cats, mink, like all types of animals are killing them. And then on top of that is they are prone to parasites. So rabbits outside, they're generally going to pick up some kind of parasite. So that's going to eat all of the nutrition that they're getting as well, and they're just going to slowly deteriorate. Injuries, they're prone to other diseases as well, especially the RHD, which is the rabbit hemorrhagic disease, which is pretty new that to Canada maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think. It came and just like wiped out thousands of bunnies all over the world, and it still is happening. So that can wipe them out as well. And then once they're dumped, really, they're kind of within this gray area, and nobody's really technically allowed to help them, because once they've been dumped, they're considered to be ferals or an invasive species. So animal control won't help them. Wildlife rehabilitators can't help them. And the SPCA will often decline bunnies who have been found outside due to the risk of bringing like rabbit hemorrhagic disease. So they have to, do like a special quarantine before they bring them into the shelter. So really on the island, isn't many places to take them, we're taking on the brunt of them.
It's important to note too, that's a policy decision. That's not the rehabbers or the SPCAs or yourself choosing this. This is the provincial government of British Columbia has said these rabbits, you can't take them in. They're not considered wildlife, but they're also not considered just domestic animals like a dog or a cat that you could take in from an SPCA perspective. It's a very difficult position because of this policy and legislation that's in place.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a question of what about TNR? That's what we do with cats. We do it with dogs, but mostly with cats across Canada and many places in the world. Is that something that is considered or used with rabbits?
It is not something that's used now. I think that if the government was able to fund something like that, but I highly doubt that will ever happen. We have reached out to different communities in the area offering assistance when they're considering doing a call, and we don't hear back from them. We've tried to do something like that. And then as for doing it with our own funds and our own rescue, just resource wise, it's really impossible for us to do that because we're, already dealing with the spaying and neutering of all the bunnies that we have in care, because the majority of people don't spay and neuter their pets because it costs around $500 to $1,000. And people are like, oh, it's just a rabbit. I'm not spending that much money on just a rabbit. That's something that we hear a lot. So yeah, if that's something where the government would fund it, that'd be great. But as like a tiny little rescue resource, like we can't really do that. Because they would all need to be like cared for afterwards as well while they recover.
Yeah. You can't just sort of snip and drop them off again. It's not quite that straightforward. I also know rabbits are considered a small animal, or no, it's not a small animal. Is it a specialty animal for veterinarians? I know there's sort of
They're
that ranking.
exotics.
Exotic.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
people often think that rabbits are like rodents, but really they're a lagomorph. So they're from the lagomorph family. They're not like a small rodent, which often people think.
And it requires a lot of specialization for a veterinarian to be able to help the exotic species, the rabbits. I know people who are very passionate about the smaller animal rescue. That is often a concern is there a veterinarian in the area who, even if I have the resources, will be able to help me just because of that speciality?
This is a big concern. This is something we've been dealing with a lot lately. Like there are minimal vets on Vancouver Island that deal with them, and in Canada in general. There's places like the UK where it's actually mandatory that every single vet is trained with rabbits. Here, whenever there's an emergency on in the evening or the weekend, either of the emergency vets generally take rabbits. They're like, all we could do is relieve pain or euthanize them. That's it. So bunnies are dying. People's pets are dying because there's no vets to take them. And in a pinch, it is really hard to get in to find someone who is able to do it.
And that's going to be one of the big things that weigh in when people are considering a rabbit as a pet, I think. So let's talk a little bit about rabbits as pets, because I've met several rabbits and they are very, very lovely. But I've also found they very much like to kind of do their own thing. They're not a dog or a cat who are going to seek out affection in what some could call an aggressive manner at times, depending on the cat or dog in your life. I've got one cat who more or less throws himself at any person who comes into the home, like Pepe Le Pew used to. It's like the falling over, scratch my belly, rubbing his face against whatever your body part might be nearby. It's really quite dramatic and funny. But I've never met a rabbit like that. Is that sort of a general truth? Rabbits do kind of like to do their own thing?
Generally, yes, because they are prey animals, so they do take time to really build their trust. And a lot of people don't know how to properly interact with them. So, rabbits aren't really like a cat or a dog where you can carry them around or interact with them the same way because rabbits don't really like to be picked up. So when you pick them up, they have just like a chemical reaction in their body where their fight or flight kicks in because they're like, I'm off the ground. This is scary, right? So it freaks them out.
It happens to me too.
Yeah. So it freaks people out. But I have a bunny who literally throws himself at me. He like paces around back and forth until I pick him up, and he gives me kisses on the lips. He comes when he's called. His name is Pinecone. He is my soul bunny. Like when I pick him up and I hold him, and he loves to snuggle. But like I also hand raised him. And I interact with him in a very specific way. Like people love to adopt baby bunnies that I've raised because I'm so good at raising them. Yeah, he'll come when he comes when he's called, when he wants to. When he wants to. And he like jumps up on the couch and hangs out with me. He grooms me. So, there are bunnies out there. It is a lot more rare. But when you get one of those bunnies, it's pretty special because being licked by a bunny is amazing. They have the softest tongues on the planet. And like, how cute is it? It's like such a treat. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got licked by a bunny. This is the best thing in the world.
Nothing else ever needs to happen.
Like, I'm done. Like, if you lick me, you're staying here forever. Bunnies are so intelligent, and they're so like, they have so much personality. You can clicker train them. There's bunny agility groups on the mainland and other places in the world, and bunnies do agility. So they are extremely smart. And they're always trying to outsmart you. Yeah. Always. Always. My bunny loves going under my bed, but he likes to chew under my bed. And so I don't let him in my bedroom. But as soon as he hears that door open, no matter where he is in the house, he will beeline it to the door. So I'll be like, trying to beat him down there. And then if I'm in my room, he'll just literally sit outside the door. So when I open it, he can just dart in there and go under the bed.
Very cute. That's there is such interesting similarities that you wouldn't expect at times between the personalities of these different species. Like the behavior you just described, I've known cats and dogs who do the exact same thing. And I'm sure there are many other animals out there who do as well. And I enjoy seeing that, where it's sort of, despite all of the differences at every possible level, there are behaviors and indicators of love and compassion and togetherness that so many different animals can feel. And it makes me feel very happy.
Exactly. I mean, you see it on TV where people bond with like different types of wildlife, or like, I knew someone who had a lizard, and the lizard was like extremely bonded to them. And I think the big thing where people don't see what rabbits' personalities are like is because they're not housing them properly and they're not caring for them properly. If you put a bunny in a tiny cage, or any animal in a tiny cage, a human in a tiny cage or a tiny room, and you leave them in there, they're not going to be able to exhibit their natural behaviors. They're going to be depressed. They're not going to be happy. And they're not gonna, if a bunny's in a cage, you can't see them run around your house and binky and like, then why are they gonna, feel good being around you?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. It really does. And talking more about the care for them, one of the things I really love about your website, and one of the reasons I know I was initially referred to Amy's Bunny Barn, is you do a great deal on the education side. And that is something we see as a very big need, especially with rabbits, because there is so much more to caring for them than people may expect, as you've been explaining and exploring. I think the food and diet section too is fascinating because, again, people may think, oh, it's a rabbit, they can eat whatever they want to eat. But there are a number of things, especially that are common in a household like mine, that are potentially toxic or highly toxic. A lot of grains, legumes, the alliums, things like that would actually be very harmful for a rabbit. And I'd have no idea. I'd think, well, they could probably eat onion, right? They eat greens. Onions have greens in them. And I'm more of a dog guy. So having had most recently a Shepherd Lab mix, she would eat anything. And then later on, if she decided she didn't like it, she'd just throw it up because that's what dogs do, especially Labrador mixes. So you stop thinking about some of that stuff outside of like grapes. But rabbits, there is a significant list of specific types of food that are good for them, and a lot of foods that would be very, very bad for them. It's very surprising. Is the education element of this something that's been very important to you all along, or is it something that you've kind of learned about as you've gone?
Very important for sure. Education is so important. Any person that we have an opportunity to interact with, we're using that to educate them, regardless if they have bunnies or not. We're just trying to educate as many people as possible. Um, and there isn't a lot of accurate information out there on the internet. And it's pretty amazing if you Google search information using the word rabbit versus using the word bunny, you're going to get completely different information on the internet. So if you Google rabbit care, you're going to get information on breeders, farming, and a lot of the bunnies they show will be in tiny cages, outdoor hutches. But if you look up bunny care, you're going to get more house rabbit information.
That's a really interesting difference and a good one to be able to include to people. I imagine you touched on this very briefly, but I'd like to do a minute on it more, is the enrichment. This is something on the wildlife side we deal with farmed animals like mink and fox, talk about enrichment. And again, I'm very familiar with from sort of the common domestic animal pets. What does enrichment look like for pet rabbits?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff you can do to enrich rabbits' lives. So the biggest thing is having a proper space for them to live in, something that's large enough so that they can exhibit their natural behaviors. And if you look up what are their natural behaviors, they like to chew, they like to dig, they like to play, they like to sleep, they like to hide. So how can you incorporate these things? Have a place for them to hide. You could use a cardboard box. There's lots of different fancy houses out there. They have extravagant bunny castles. Which are super cool. Puzzle toys, like puzzle toys that you use for cats and dogs for feeding. They are amazing at figuring those things out. So we use those at the shelter here where we feed them their pellets with puzzle toys.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how quickly they figure those things out. So that's a really good way to enrich their lives. There's lots of like DIY things you can make too, like as simple as like a toilet paper roll, shove hay in there, put some herbs in there, like some dried herbs or a treat, and they just go absolutely bonkers over that. And it's simple to make, and you can make it at home. And if you have kids, that's a good way to get them involved in the care as well. Other ways that they can kind of interact with the bunny without having to hold them, because obviously we don't recommend the kids ever hold bunnies. Yeah, and then like providing different things in their space, so like different toys that they can exhibit their natural behaviors. So people will do like a dig box or do different things where they have to like forage for their food, which they would naturally do outside. They like tunnels, like cat tunnels. They love those, like sticks to chew on. And obviously they need just daily exercise out of their enclosure as well.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be confined to a tiny cage.
Yeah, I was thinking back. I had a friend who died several years ago, Emily Ugarenko, and she had a bunny room, as I recall. And I know a few people who have done that. And it's like, one of the smaller bedrooms maybe in the house or in a mud room or something that they have converted effectively into a space for the rabbits. And yes, there may be cages in there for them for certain periods, but they generally get to just kind of hang out and they have their enrichment stuff. And then certain times of the days, the dogs would be put into other areas or taken outside and the rabbits would get to roam a little bit more. And it was a very cool thing to see. And it allows, I think, for a lot of creativity as well, if you're really passionate about giving your rabbit a lot, to be able to give them that kind of space. And one of the things I'd like to get at before we wrap up is behavior. You've got a great guide, and it's done in a way that's very simple. It's very much like a glossary of terms almost. But this is a thing for me that I think should be somehow a requirement before bringing any non-human animal into your home, is learning to understand the physical cues that other animals give off in their behavior. Because if you spend time with them, in my experience, and learn their individual cues as well as sort of those generic ones, you can have such a deep and meaningful communicative relationship with an animal. But it starts with sort of that opening up of they behave differently than me. Let's find out what that looks like. How would you suggest people kind of get going in learning about bunny behavior?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We definitely recommend that people do research before just impulsively getting rabbits. Like, there's a lot to know, and they're not just a easy pet that you put in a cage to teach your kids responsibility. Like, they're so complex. I've been dealing with rabbits for almost 20 years now, and I'm still learning about them. Like, they're complex animals. They don't communicate like cats and dogs. So you really do have to be like aware of their their movements, how their ears are, like what do their eyes look like. So there's just so much to know about them. you know
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like, I'm still constantly learning new things.
Well, and that's the best way to go through life, in my opinion, is always learning.
Like, research for sure, and then talk to
Mhm.
rescues, like reputable rescues. Like, breeders and pet stores aren't able to teach people
Yeah.
these things. Like, we often get people who look at our page and may have got a rabbit somewhere else, and they're like, oh wow, like I didn't know that, and I've had rabbits for 10 years. It's like, oh, I didn't know this. So, like, a lot of people, regardless if they have bunnies or not, they're reaching out to us and they're like, wow, I've learned so much from your page. Like, so we, are trying to educate people on things that even I would want to. I'm like, what would I want to know if I was new to
Mhm.
bunnies? So
Awesome. The adoption process. People, I think, sometimes can be a little overwhelmed by this, regardless of the animal, and not fully understand why there is such a process in place.
yeah, I mean, like, our adoption process is pretty similar to any other rescue. We want to make sure, like, we're their voice. We don't want to put them in a situation that they had already come from, and we want to make sure that people aren't impulsively getting them or getting them for the wrong reasons. So having a thorough adoption process definitely weans people out. Um, and I find, like, our adoption process is also educational, because we do have, research the website, do your research first.
Yeah.
And then we have, once they fill out the form, we do a phone interview and we talk to them at length. And then we have them come into the shelter and we meet them in person as well, because you learn a lot more about people when you meet them in person. And then we have to meet them and make sure it's a really good fit, because sometimes we could talk to people over the phone, and then once we see how they or their kids are interacting with the bunnies, we're like, oh, this probably isn't the right pet for you, now, or at this time. Like, do more research. Because a lot of people put on their application, oh yeah, we've done a bunch of research, and then we ask them questions and they have not done any research.
Yeah.
And we want to see where they're going to be living, because we want to make sure that it's a suitable space for them to live.
Absolutely. And I think again, it's a very reasonable thing. As you said back at the beginning, is you are responsible for these bunnies from the moment they come into your care, and ensuring that they have what they're going to need and aren't going to be in another bad situation is really, really important. And I think most rescues who are upfront about that, it's because of experience too, unfortunately. So I think it's, yeah, it's
Yeah.
important for folks to really take their time If they've done the research and decided this is the way forward for them and they do want to have a bunny in their life, then it is. All right. You also need to research the rescue. You need to find out where this rabbit is coming from. Are you just, rescuing, people kids a podcast, but I'm doing air quotes, rescuing from Kijiji or Craigslist is not the same as working with a registered charity that runs a rescue, such as Amy's Bunny Barn. And I think that's always something for folks to be aware of is just because someone puts the word rescue in front of it or adopt doesn't mean it's actually like a rescue adoption situation.
Yeah, or like when an animal is free, doing air quotations as well.
Yeah.
They aren't free.
It's an unfortunate reality of life that nothing is ever free, truly. And in these cases, it sometimes even has some untoward background on it.
Yeah, like all our adopters, we provide support through the bunny's entire life. We keep in touch with, all of our adopters, and I think they all know that they can come to us as well, and they are often reaching out to us for support for different things.
Well, it's great that you remain available to them for that. And I think it also means that they are more likely to have long-term success, as are the bunnies.
Exactly. And then when they aren't able to keep them for various reasons, then they're going to contact us to, take them back.
Yeah. And that does happen, unfortunately. There's a lot of things in life that come up that require change. And being able to rely on the rescue you worked with, I think, makes a big difference for people, because it's not an easy situation for anybody when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. We're committed to them for their lifetime.
Perfect. And I think that's a great spot to stop, unless you have anything else you want me to be including.
No, I think that's good, other than we got our charitable status in July of this year, which is very exciting. New. We were already running as a society, but now we're able to issue tax receipts, which is super exciting. Yeah.
To find out more about Amy's Bunny Barn or make a tax-deductible donation, visit amysbunnybarn.org. They can also be found on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest. Links are in your podcast player or in this episode's show notes at defenderradio.com. I want to thank Amy for joining me during a very busy schedule and for everything she does for the rabbits. It's also worth noting that Amy's Bunny Barn recently gained charitable status and can now offer Canadian tax receipts. I also want to thank you for listening and your ongoing care and compassion for animals. Until next time, I'm Michael Howie for Defender Radio and the Fur Bearers, reminding you to stay informed and stay strong.